So, good morning again. How wonderful it is to be with you. My name is Kodo, and we are on the second day of 5 on the topic of the 5 precepts. Our practice with the 5 precepts: sila, virtue, restraint. Taking a moment again to appreciate all the comments that come through. As I can't see any of you, this is my connection with you. See how you're doing. So in this development of our discussion around the precepts, yesterday I discussed some of the general principles of relating to the precepts, and I will continue to do this throughout the week, and then just touch on each of the five precepts. Of course, in these short times, we will only just be able to scratch the surface with these. So I hope that some further reflection unfolds for you. To begin, I would like to I'd like to note that today is the full moon day. Yeah, the full moon day. So last night in San Francisco, this bright moon behind just the haze of some collecting clouds. And I was reminded how auspicious it is that we're discussing the precepts at the full moon time. You see, because as many of you know, this is a very traditional time in Theravadan practice to visit temples and to renew your commitment to the precepts, take the precepts again, and to spend a day committed to meticulous observation of the precepts and to meditation practice, sort of immersing oneself as best one can in the Dharma. So I'm wondering about how that can make its way through each of our days today. So as I discussed yesterday, one of these key principles with all of the precepts, in practicing with all of the precepts, is that of non-harming. And it's definitely been said more than once that one concise summary of the path of practice is to grow ever and ever more skillful in the path of non-harming, ever and ever more skillful in not harming others and not harming ourselves. And I think this can provide a basic orientation to how we relate to the 5 precepts. 5 precepts, again, are just these, just as a reminder for ourselves. And I'll circle back to the first one in a moment. But they are just like this. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept to abstain from harming living beings. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept to abstain from taking what is not given. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept to abstain from sexual misconduct. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept to abstain from false speech. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept to abstain from intoxicants that are a cause for heedlessness. Something I thought we could do is, with the few minutes that we have, to reflect a little bit on these first and second precepts together. And I use the word reflect. I'm actually thinking of holding them in a kind of contemplative way with you, and to pause and really take them in almost like a meditation object, and to move along phrase by phrase and see what it is that comes forward in your heart of meditation and contemplation as we move phrase by phrase. So You may even want to jot down a note or two, or you may want to offer some phrases to the YouTube chat as they come up. But to slowly and contemplatively reflect, how does it resonate for you? What does it call forward? Just to begin with the first. For the sake of our training together, what does that call forth? For the sake of our training together. To me, it puts me in contact with the community. And all of a sudden, I have these memories of various temples or training centers or monasteries, and I have the felt sense of being with people. And that these precepts both support my development and freedom, and they support this connection of community and safety. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept. That's evocative for me. There's something about effort involved in undertaking. There's a resolve or an intention, which is to say, I'm making an effort to conduct myself in such and such a way. I'm making this effort. That also touches on the fact that the precepts are a practice. Something about them is we don't complete the practice of the precepts by making an effort once. We undertake them, and then we undertake them again, and we undertake them again. And as far as I understand it, the purpose of these precepts is not to solidify a self or further solidify a self through unwholesome forms of shame or self-harm. But rather, one of the purposes, one of the functions of the precepts and practicing them is to more and more free our hearts. So we can show up in skillful ways for others and, in a sense, consummate this path of non-harming within ourselves. So for the sake of our training together, I make this effort. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking life. In some of the original, it's to refrain from harming breathing beings. And I think that latter image to me is just a bit more evocative. Just a bit more evocative, to refrain from harming breathing beings, because I sense into the effect that not abiding in this way, not conducting myself in this way, would cause harm to someone who breathes, another breathing being. The phrasing of not taking life also is evocative. It edges into the second precept because it shares the word take. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept not to take what isn't given. And there's something right there in the word take that's so clear, so clearly about, to me, so clearly grasping. You can feel, sense, and to take, and how that's quite a different physical, mental posture from our practice of giving, our practice of open-handedness, and the virtues that brings along. So, gotta slowly reflect and slowly contemplate on these precepts, particularly on the full moon day. As I mentioned yesterday, one of the closest analogs to the precepts in the early literature is called the 10 wholesome actions. You can find these in the numerical discourses in the Book of Tens, for those of you who like to read along. I came across something interesting. So with the 10 wholesome actions, The Buddha teaches them in contrast to 10 unwholesome actions. And you could well guess. The first one would be to take life is unwholesome. And then goes through the rest of the 10. To refrain from taking life, to abandon taking life, to give up taking life is wholesome. Then he does something really interesting, and he presents this idea of the roots of the wholesome. What's underneath the wholesome. And I was reminded when I came across this teaching, some years ago, I was living at Tassajara Monastery. I was the gardener for some time, and one of my fellow gardeners was inspired to plant something new. So there's this lawn across from the meditation hall. There's a one-lane dirt drive that comes into the monastery. And across that drive from the Zendo is this little yard, a little yard that we call the moon lawn. Not sure exactly why it got its name, but it was beautifully illuminated whenever the moon was full. And my fellow gardener was inspired to sort of dig up this disused area and plant something beautiful. She wanted to plant a yarrow lawn. And yarrow, when they're mature, they have these like broad, soft leaves that when you rub them, they're quite fragrant, and then these tall stems with clusters of beautiful flowers. I thought, yeah, this is something beautiful we can do. Something beautiful we can do that would nourish us and nourish the other monks in the monastery, the other monastics in the monastery. And this comes to mind for me this morning as we're meditating, and we're nourishing what's beautiful in us, nourishing what's wholesome. Maybe in some way, as we nourish what's beautiful in us, these soft leaves can come to sprout. These soft leaves can come unfurl in us, in ourselves, and something fragrant can come forward. It's said in the Dhammapada that the scent of virtue, the scent of sila, for us, the scent of the precepts, travels against the wind, even in the way that the scent of lavender and rosemary, jasmine, don't travel against the wind. So may we have a reflective, contemplative, dharmic day, keeping ourselves safely on the path, in touch with these precepts on the auspicious full moon day. And right now, for anyone who would like to stay just a moment, I'm going to put a link so we can all see the precepts together. And then if you'd like, we can chant them together. This may take a moment to load for you. So this tends to be done in call and response, and this can be our closing. And we'll say farewell. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept to abstain from harming living beings. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept to abstain from taking what is not given. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept to abstain from sexual misconduct. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept to abstain from false speech. For the sake of our training together, I undertake the precept to abstain from intoxicants that are a cause for heedlessness. May you be well. May you be well served by your practice of the precepts. Please take good care today. Until tomorrow.